Chi, take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose and let it drift out like smoke curling up from a warm hearth. Allow your shoulders to fall and your eyelids to grow heavy. If there's a blanket near, pull it up close and settle into its weight. Poppy milk was common. Made from crushed poppy seeds soaked in warm water or wine, it was used to quiet infants and ease suffering adults. A single sip could bring sleep. More and the dreams came heavy and thick. This wasn't science yet, but it was something like magic. They didn't know the word opiate, but they knew that pain could melt under the spell of a cloudy draught, and many a pilgrim, soldier, or midwife swore by it. Soft and grounding, like thick woolen cloaks wrapped tight against a midnight chill. The wind outside is hushed now. In some parts of Europe, your thoughts like feathers caught in soft wind. The old woman hums. Not a song, really, but a rhythm, something ancient and round and slow. The fire dims to a deep orange glow. Shadows grow taller, but they no longer frighten you. They lean in kindly. Everything smells of herbs and ash and honey. You feel yourself loosening like a knot. Time folds inward. You see flickers of things, dreams, maybe, or memories that don't belong to you. A forest of blue trees, a tower filled with bees, a staircase that curves into the moon. Particularly in northern lands, the line between medicine and mysticism was thin as smoke. What we might call getting high, they called healing or holy or heresy. They knew the plants, and the plants knew them. Some were feared, some revered, some forgotten altogether. But in those quiet, forgotten corners of time deep in the woods, beneath cathedral stones, in the cellars of apothecaries, and the hollows of carved-out roots humanity reached again and again for ways to feel something more, something beyond pain, or perhaps something closer to it, not escape, but entry into the mystery. Ale was sometimes brewed with strange herbs instead of hops. The shadows are only watching gently. The herbs have done their work, and somewhere in the deep moss of memory the old ways still hum. Groot Ale, it was called. Sweet gale, yarrow, and wild rosemary replaced the bitter hops we know today, and some of these herbs were mildly psychoactive. Drinking this ale warmed more than the belly. In taverns and feast halls, songs grew stranger, eyes glossed, and laughter curved sideways like the smoke from rushlights. By the 12th century, hops became more common partly because the church preferred them. Groot had too much unpredictability, too much spirit. Far from cities and mossy woods and sacred groves, women sometimes called wise, sometimes called witches gathered plants by moonlight. They picked belladonna leaves with gloved fingers. They stirred mandrake root into animal fat. They ground henbane with ash and rose oil. Breathing it was a prayer in itself. The scent was thick, holy, slightly intoxicating, clinging to robes and nostrils and memory. Some said it brought one closer to God. Long hours of chanting, fasting, and breathing smoke blurred the line between waking and worship. Monks, especially in their isolated cloisters, sometimes reported visions, saints glowing, voices heard in candlelight, a warm presence that passed through walls. Were they miracles, or just the slow, holy unraveling of the self through incense, fatigue, and repetition? And from these they made what were whispered about as flying ointments, not for wings, but for visions. When rubbed on the skin, especially tender places like wrists or temples or thighs, These salves brought dreams of flight, of dancing with Phi, of speaking to spirits. Was it hallucination? Or did they believe the spirit truly soared? Trees barely stir, and the fire crackles low. You are safe here, and tonight we'll drift into the distant past together. But the church said such visions were lies of the devil heresy blooming from herbs. And still, the ointments persisted, hidden, shared, remembered in secret, passed from palm to palm with a nod and a warning. Not into war or chaos, but into quiet places of hush and healing, into the hidden world of forgotten herbs, sacred smokes, and whispered rituals, where getting high meant something older, more mystical, often holy, sometimes strange, and always deeply human. Now breathe again and let go. Our story tonight begins at the edge of a small medieval village. The sun has long set, and the cottages are dark, save for a faint golden glow slipping through the thatched eaves of a single hut. You walk slowly toward it, drawn by the scent, something warm, bitter, and strangely sweet, a mix of honey, wood smoke, and crushed leaves steeping in boiling water. This is the home of an old woman, neither feared nor revered exactly, but known. She is the village herbalist, and her home is full of smells and steam, and little bundles of drying things tied with twine. On her shelves are jars of poppy heads and mugwort, crushed henbane seeds in beeswax pouches, dried petals of datura, and little clay bowls blackened from oil and fire. She prepares what people dare not name aloud, and in the hush of her hut it is always twilight, even at midday. You step inside and sit near the hearth, where a heavy iron pot bubbles softly over embers. She doesn't speak. She knows why you're here. Maybe it's pain. Maybe it's grief. Maybe, just maybe, it's curiosity. She pours a little liquid into a cup made of horn, hands it to you, and gestures toward the low pallet near the fire. It is bitter and warm, and you drink slowly, feeling something ease inside you. Your limbs soften, your head tilts, and the flickering shadows on the walls begin to blur at the edges. The room seems to sway, and the fire crackles like it's speaking in some lost tongue. Your thoughts drift like smoke out the chimney, slow, spiraling, rising. In the Middle Ages, to be high wasn't a word, but the experience existed in healing, in prayer, in ritual. But not all altered states came from apothecary jars. Some were born under stars. One monk wrote of women who claimed to fly through the air at night, riding on broomsticks or wolves or vapors. In sacred places, too, altered states were courted. Incense, rich with myrrh and frankincense, filled the vaulted cathedrals like fog. There were stranger things still. But let us return now to the hut by the woods. You lie on the pallet, your limbs warm and light. In the Middle Ages, sleep now. The fire crackles low, glowing like the last breath of an old dragon. You don't need to open your eyes. The scent of elderflower and smoldering moss lingers in the air, curling gently around you like a lullaby. We find ourselves in the stone corridors of a monastery high on a hill, where time slows and echoes live longer than voices. The year is 1227. The monks of this Benedictine order live in silence, their days measured in prayer and labor, in simple meals and sacred stillness. But here, in the herbal cloister, something curious blooms. Brother Anselm the apothecarius walks slowly between beds of wild heather and blue poppies. collecting what he calls the blessed tears of the earth. Sufi mystics used such substances in deeply spiritual settings, not for pleasure, but for union with the divine. The Sami people of Lapland, herders and mystics of the Arctic, used the red and white spotted Amanita muscaria mushroom in shamanic rituals, consumed in careful preparation, sometimes passed first through reindeer urine to remove toxins. This mushroom induced vivid visions and altered perception. Shamans wrapped in reindeer furs would enter trance states, beating drums that mimicked the heartbeat of the world. She dips a carved wooden spoon into a thick black syrup of poppy, yew, and molasses. It's bitter. It numbs the tongue, but it brings sleep, and with sleep, peace. That's all she ever promised. They spoke of sacred smoke, of poppy dreams, of angelic visitations, and spirits whispering from wells. They didn't chase sensation for its own sake, or perhaps they did, but always wrapped in silence, in awe, sometimes in fear. The snow outside might fall like silence, but inside they flew. The moonlight dapples the forest floor like forgotten coins. Somewhere an owl calls, but within the hut it is still warm, still safe. You can still feel the last traces of that ancient mixture in your chest, softening the breath, quieting the pulse, smoothing the rough corners of waking life. Beneath cathedrals and cloisters, through forests and frost, into deserts and steamy rooms, let the night carry you, just as it carried them. Always the same yearning, a reaching out not away from life, but deeper into it, into mystery, into warmth, into the strange and sacred space where the world softens and the soul can float, across clouds into fire through memories not their own. They returned with stories and warnings, with healing, with prophecy. These experiences were sacred, dangerous, respected. In swirling dances beneath the moon or beneath flickering lamplight in narrow stone rooms, seekers closed their eyes and turned inward. They weren't fleeing the world. They were chasing meaning in the space between breaths. That kind of high was a prayer, not a party. He does not speak much, but his notes, written in tiny Latin script, speak volumes. He has observed that certain mixtures of herbs and oils soothe the soul, draw out fever, or even call dreams like ships to harbor. Take the bathhouses of medieval Central Europe, where hot water and steam combine with spiced wines, singing and smoke to create a kind of euphoric atmosphere, unintentional and lonely. Consider the lead-glazed cups used by some taverns and wealthy homes. Drinking acidic wines from such vessels could cause hallucinations, tremors, and confusion. Called the trembling sickness, this quiet poisoning was mysterious and not understood for centuries. Those who suffered saw angels or demons, felt the room sway, though they sat still, wept uncontrollably, or laughed without meaning. Some thought they were cursed. Some said touched by God. In truth, it was only the slow damage of time and ignorance. And yet, even this suffering became part of the collective memory of altered states. Though condemned by some clergy, they remained popular for centuries. Here, scented oils and mild herbal infusions created a soft intoxication, a heady, slow pleasure not far from dreaming. Laughter echoed off damp stone, lovers met, poets hummed to themselves, and the steam carried it all upward, into the rafters and out through the sky, vents like sighs. The hum of the old woman fades into silence, and your thoughts float quietly now, Suspended in the warm hush of memory and imagination, you feel yourself carried softly, gently, without resistance, into the second part of our story. Our journey now carries us far from the village and its gentle hearth. In Moorish Spain, the apothecaries of Cordoba and Seville held vast knowledge gleaned from Greek manuscripts, Arab texts, and centuries of careful record-keeping. Here, science and spirit coexisted, and medicine was far more advanced than much of Europe. Yet even here, altered states were not only medical, but mystical. By candlelight, he distills his mixtures. Not potions, not poisons, but elixirs for contemplation, he writes. In his records, we find references to things we might now call narcotics. A poppy infusion for aching joints, a theriac syrup with opium and honey for monks suffering from the cold, the plague, or melancholia. But more mysterious still is his mention of the Vale wine, a rare blend of wine, rose water, and crushed mandragora root. Taken only on holy feast nights in minuscule doses, it was said to bring about sacred visions, angels in the rafters, bells with no rope, a gentle blue light that pulsed inside the stone chapel walls. He never called it getting high. He called it lifting the veil. And no one outside the order ever knew. Far to the south, across the sea and desert winds, other mysteries brewed. Within perfumed rooms tiled in blue and gold, scholars mixed hashish into honeyed pastes called majun. It was consumed slowly, a ritual of quiet introspection. Meanwhile, in colder lands, the North held its own strange secrets. But even ordinary people found ways to drift from pain or boredom or simply the heaviness of life. Still, not all journeys were joyous. Some were darker. Back in the apothecary's hut, the old woman stirs another pot. This one is for someone else. Perhaps a mother grieving, or a soldier returned too early. Outside, the wind has picked up slightly, rustling through the bare trees. They did not have our words. They didn't say hi, or stoned, or tripping. You're drifting now, back into the dark, mossy folds of time. Breathe in now, slow and long. Let the breath rise like steam from a copper pot. Let it go. The fire burns low, reduced now to faint red coals that pulse like the heart of the earth itself. The silence is comforting, deep like the velvet dark behind your closed eyes. The year is 1311. His notes are fragile, barely legible in places, but speak of something extraordinary, a space for sacred solitude, where monks were permitted to enter for a kind of spiritual inhalation. But what mattered most to Brother Lucas was what he called illumination sin lingua, illumination without language. In Wales, hidden in the ruins of a manor home destroyed during the English Civil War, archaeologists uncovered a strange little room. A wise woman could become a saint or be burned. A monk with visions could be canonized or condemned. And so these practices, especially those involving mind-altering substances, were wrapped in silence, as relief, as a gentle push into sleep or prayer or forgetting, for pain, for mourning, for mystery, passed by memory, not paper, hidden in songs or symbols carved under a bedpost. Sometimes they were forgotten entirely, but sometimes, near the bones of saints and the roots of poppies, the air is still thick with memory and herb-laced hush, like soft wool pressed to your cheek. Let go of the day. You are not in the 21st century anymore. You are tucked beneath woven blankets in a timber-bird room, where smoke curls through a hole in the ceiling and the wind carries prayers between branches. Outside, someone walks with a lantern. Inside, you sleep, in clay cups and animal hide pouches, in steam rising from stone baths, in candlelit chambers where a soul unburdened itself at last. Queen Eleanor of Castile, it is said, traveled with her own healer, who crafted sleeping draughts laced with valerian and mulberry wine. Chroniclers whisper that she sometimes spent days in what they called the sunless calm of deep, medicine-born stillness for the body and mind. Did she dream of hawks and hunting, or of fire and frost? No one knows, but even royalty, with silk and coin, needed to leave the world behind sometimes. Sometimes they left echoes, your thoughts slow to the rhythm of a heartbeat you don't have to control. In and out, like the tides of an ancient sea. It wasn't a pantry or bedroom. It had no chimney, yet the walls were blackened, and in the center a carved stone basin, smooth with use. Tiny traces of burned juniper, dried yew, and even cannabis sativa clung to the floor. This wasn't a kitchen. It was something else. Something private, possibly medicinal, possibly spiritual, possibly both. That sense of something more, something realer than real, which could never be spoken, only felt, a truth shaped like a flame, a prayer without a mouth. She left behind not books, but a series of cloth scraps used as both recipe holders and diaries. On one scrap, written in soft iron gall ink, are the words, "For sorrow of the heart, take 2 spoonfuls of the poppy milk, and add the honey of blue bees. Let them drink it near the lavender flame, and sleep shall follow." The honey of blue bees likely referred to bees that fed on wild herbs high in alkaloids. The lavender flame, perhaps a candle dipped in violet wax scented with calming oils. The ritual is described gently, without fear, without grandeur, just a kindness passed from one woman to another in the quiet corners of childbirth and grief. He describes a mix of crushed frankincense, blue lotus petals, imported from distant Egypt, and a resin he calls lucida fumata, the smoke of clarity. Mixed over coals, it created a room of thick, fragrant mist. A single monk was allowed inside at a time to sit in silence, to meditate, and to let the vapors open the veil of vision. No speech, no doctrine, just breath, shadow, and the curling smoke of mystery. Excavators centuries later would find what appeared to be a sealed room beneath the altar, no doorway, no stairs, just smooth stone and a single iron ring embedded in the wall. Inside was a small chamber lined with scorched clay tiles and dark soot, as if something had been burned here for years. No bodies, no treasure, just a ring of charred incense cones, melted glass bottles with residue inside, and faintly carved symbols on the walls, crosses, stars, plants, and spirals. Scholars debated, was it a secret place of worship, a forgotten crypt? But among the few remaining texts found buried nearby was a vellum scroll titled simply Domus Vaporum, the House of Vapors. Outside, the trees creak softly in the wind. Old trees, the kind that have listened to centuries. Inside, the warmth wraps you in stillness. You are floating between stories now, drifting like a leaf down a quiet stream. And as we float, we arrive gently at the third part of our journey into the mystery. Our story now opens beneath the floorboards of a forgotten medieval church, hidden behind a small chapel in rural France. It was written in the hand of a priest, Brother Lucas, whose name does not appear in any official record. Was it hallucinogenic? Possibly. The ingredients hint at mild psychoactive effects. There are other mysteries, too. In medieval times, the line between healer and heretic was often thin. One such echo lingers in a small mountain town in northern Italy, in the records of a 14th century midwife named Alda. This was how much of medieval getting high existed not as thrill or indulgence, but as aid. And in those moments, high was not high. It was low, close to the earth. Let your body sink deeper now. Even kings in their high chambers sought refuge in herbs. You too are leaving now, drifting further. The details of the room blur. The fire dims to embers. Let yourself float. Breathe slowly now, deeper into the quiet and deeper into the past. The candlelight flickers gently on stone walls, casting shadows like petals. You are floating still, warm and weightless, and just beyond the veil of dreams we continue. Our story now moves toward the castle walls, toward nobility, toward those with access not only to gold and land, but to rarest herbs, imported spices, and traveling physicians from far-off lands. In the court of Frederick II, Holy Roman Emperor and lover of science, we find a curious case. Frederick, fascinated by the body, the soul, and the stars, kept a court full of alchemists, physicians, and translators. It was here in Palermo, under lemon trees and silk awnings, that experiments were quietly conducted, not only in language and astronomy, but also in sensation. A translated Arab text referred to a dream powder, gifted by traders from the East, made of opium, myrrh, and crushed cloves, rolled in honey and swallowed before sleep. It did not cure disease. It cured restlessness, anxiety, sleeplessness, and once a curious physician noted it made the emperor weep for 3 straight hours, and then smile as if seeing God himself. This was not sin, not indulgence. It was curiosity wrapped in wisdom. Frederick would later write that a man who does not sleep well cannot think well, and so the powder became part of his private regimen. Not spoken of in public, of course, only passed silently with a bow from physician to monarch beneath painted ceilings. But not all intoxicants were consumed. Some were worn. In certain coastal towns in what is now Croatia, fishermen wore amulets around their necks filled with dried herbs, wormwood, sea lavender, and crumbled poppy petals. They believed the scent alone kept away nightmares and ghosts, and some said it helped them feel light behind the eyes, especially during long nights on the water. Whether this was superstition or sensory elevation, no one can say for sure, but the herbs clung to their skin and to memory. And what of the wandering souls, those who had no hearth, no lord, no monastery? Minstrels and beggars, dancers and jesters. They too found their versions of comfort, of drifting, of sweet forgetfulness. A traveling juggler's pouch found preserved in peat contained, along with dice and bone whistles, a corked vial of resin soaked in something sweet. It smelled of marjoram and burnt honey, possibly something he lit before sleep. Possibly something he smeared across his lips before performance. The record does not say, but the weight of it suggests meaning, ritual, relief. There are strange documents, 2 scraps of letters, half-written confessions from penitent scribes. One, from 1289, speaks of a brother who used a spirit of fumitory to hear the voices of angels more clearly during long copying shifts. He was later chastised, but not expelled. The abbot, it seems, had also tried it once only once. We return now to the little hut in the woods, where the old herbalist tends to a sleeping visitor. The fire has long gone to embers, and the shutters are drawn against the chill. On the wooden table sit her tools, a mortar of stone, a bundle of thyme, a wax-sealed scroll. She has always known the line between medicine and dream, between healing and flight, between sleep and the space just beyond it. She works slowly, and she does not name her craft, but she knows what pain looks like, and what peace can feel like. In her drawers are dried datura pods, mandrake, curls, violets, mugwort, fennel. She does not use them all. Only when the eyes are sunken, the breath too shallow, the grief too deep. She does not promise visions, but she knows where they live. And sometimes that is enough. Sleep now. Let your breath come slower still. Let the warmth wrap you again. You are being carried across centuries on a bed of crushed herbs and hollow reeds. You are not lost. You are only drifting, and the drifting is part of the healing. The hush continues. Even the wind outside has softened, brushing faintly against the shutters, as if it, too, is listening. Your limbs are heavy now, but gently so like stones resting at the bottom of a calm stream. The story carries on, and with it your breath slower, softer, like the feathered flicker of smoke rising from an oil lamp. And now we move to the final chamber of this journey, where high and low, sacred and common, all intertwine beneath the shared sky of the medieval world. In the far east of Europe, along the quiet Carpathian slopes, there lived mountain people who brewed from fungi and herbs not for escape, but for communication. The Znakari folk healers, part mystic, part herbalist, created brews from birch resin, wild honey, and small doses of Claviceps purpurea, a fungus, now known as ergot. It grew on rye and moist years, and in large quantities it brought sickness, even madness. But in rare, careful hands it could be used to ease childbirth, calm convulsions, and, as whispered in old dialects, bring about the star trance. This state, described as seeing the world from above the fire, was not sought by many, only by the chosen, the wise, or the desperate. They drank from carved horns. They lay beside coals while deer-hide drums sounded a heartbeat rhythm. They breathed in oils of crushed fir and resin. Then slowly they entered. The eyes would flicker, the limbs would twitch, and when they returned, they spoke slowly, eyes misted, of hills that walked and birds that spoke truth. Not all believed them, but all listened. Further west, deep in the winding alleys of Prague, a guild of perfumers operated under quiet patronage. While most sold oils and soaps for noble households, a select few crafted what they called vapors for serenity. These were small sachets bundles of muslin, filled with dried rose petals, spikenard, bitter orange peel, and sometimes, according to scribbled merchant notes, powdered extract of sleepy root, likely valerian. Clients would hold them to the nose while lying in bed, or heat them gently above candles to release a slow bloom of aroma. One noble woman, Lady Christina of Bohemia, wrote in a letter to her cousin that these sachets carried her from grief to meadow in but 3 breaths. It wasn't just nobles or mystics, of course. Even the peasants, those who had little and worked the most, found ways to soften the edge of reality. It might be through home-brewed meads, laced with herbs found in hedgerows, meadow sweet, which dulled pain, wild lettuce, which calmed the nerves, elderflower wine, which blurred the world just enough to laugh again after a long winter. These weren't luxuries, they were tools. Survival tricks passed down mother to daughter, from stable hand to plowman. A moment of release, a pocket of peace. And sometimes it wasn't what they took in, it was what they breathed, the fields of flax in spring, the blooming of elder groves in May, the heavy pollen drifting through air warmed by early summer. Even that just air, full of scent, could be enough. One monk once wrote, "I sat among the bees in time and thought I had died and become a star." He had consumed nothing, just the world, the air, the scent of life. And so we return again, finally, to that image. The hearth fire faded to gray ash, the apothecary's tools cleaned and wrapped, the candles nearly out. You lie still, barely remembering the start of the story because your mind has floated too far from the shore of now. You are in the old world now. You've walked cobbled roads and whispered prayers. You've smelled incense and nightshade, steam and violet. You've seen shadows dance and glimpsed what they saw. Not a rush, not a thrill, but a stillness so complete it shimmered. You've tasted what getting high meant in times of quill and cradle. It meant silence and ritual and sometimes madness, but more often mercy. So rest now, deeper, looser. Let even the story fade. There will be more stories later. For now, you are only breath and body and the softest cradle of sleep. Let the last coals dim. Let the shutters still. Let the hush grow whole. You are safe, you are still, and you are drifting. Sleep is nearly wrapped around you now, like a long velvet cloak pulled up beneath the chin. And still our story breathes softly, like a lullaby hummed in the back of an old throat. There was no singular drug, no universal word for it, no consensus. It was simply experience, altered, shifted, deepened. And those experiences were shaped by purpose. You did not partake to flee life. You did it to survive life, to mourn, to touch God, or to make the pain sleep. The embers have gone to memory, and yet the warmth remains. The herb in question may have been Scopolia carniolica, a belladonna relative. But through deprivation or coercion, prisoners locked in low stone cells inhaled mildew, urine fumes, and lamp oil for weeks. When the body aches, or the soul trembles, or the world becomes too sharp, people seek ways to soften the edges. And in the Middle Ages they did so with herbs, with smoke, with oil, with prayer, and with stories. Their minds bent not through intention, but by exposure. And yet the dreams came, wild, fractured, surreal. One prisoner in Rouen described a dream where a fish taught him to pray. Another claimed to see his mother weeping through a crack in the ceiling, though she had died 5 years earlier. And the story has paused, not ended. Because stories like this one, they live inside you now, in every breath, in every dream that begins with the scent of old herbs and ends with the sound of silence. Not all altered states are chemical. Some are born of isolation, of silence, of shadows too long. Taken in very small amounts, it created mild euphoria and lightness. City officials quickly banned it after 2 friars were found weeping with laughter beneath a market stall, claiming they could see sound painted in the sky. You've seen the flicker of shadow in monk-lit halls. You've felt the warmth of a potion in your belly. You've knelt in incense smoke and leaned back in candlelight. You've walked fields full of violet bloom and pulled down sleep like a heavy curtain. The practice faded, but the memory lingered in jokes and poetry and whispers. We journey now not to a new land, but into reflection, into the spaces between. It's called Liber Somniorum, the Book of Sleep. Mothers, weary and soft-spoken, would rub poppy oil into a baby's feet during colic fits. A father might hang crushed chamomile blossoms above a crib, and children, sick or frightened, were sometimes given diluted teas of valerian or wild lettuce. They were told, "The fairies will bring you better dreams now." And maybe they did. Its pages detail rituals for better rest, for easing nightmares, and for accessing the clear dreams thought to hold prophecy. Alongside prayers to Saint Dymphna and Saint Raphael, there are recipes. Crush the anise with honey and add it to warm goat's milk. Drink before the moon climbs high. Or, brew petals of the night rose with fennel seeds and place beneath the tongue. Lay not facing east. These weren't simply household tricks. They were remembered, recorded, honored. Some had mild sedatives. Some were merely ritual, but all believed in the same truth, that sleep, like divinity, could be entered and guided. Consider this. There was no uniform high in the medieval mind. Many of the plants and resins used in medieval times were not outlawed or feared. They were part of life, carried in pouches, hung over beds, stirred into soup, and yet they held power, a sacred, quiet kind of power, one not always visible, but always known. There is a small Latin manuscript from the Low Countries, dated 1392, hand-illustrated and stitched with faded blue thread. Even children weren't untouched by this culture of gentle alteration. One peculiar record from the Italian city of Lucca details a carnival where performers distributed candies, small, hard sugar drops infused with herb of laughing. Even punishments in medieval times sometimes involved altered states. Not intentionally, but what ties them all together, peasants with their mugwort bundles, queens with their poppy syrups, monks with their holy vapors, is a simple truth. The human mind seeks doorways. You've walked through those doorways now. You've touched the carved wood of apothecary cupboards. Now there's nothing left to do. No more rooms to explore. No more whispers to follow. Only stillness. Only rest. Let your breath fall like dust in a sunbeam. Let your thoughts lie flat and smooth like parchment waiting for ink. You have arrived. Let your eyes stay closed now, or if they flutter open, let them see only softness. The room in your mind is dim and warm, lit by memory's glow. Outside, perhaps the night deepens, but inside, the story moves as slowly and gently as a drifting feather. There's no rush, nothing to chase, just breath, and the long hush of time unfolding around you like folds in worn linen. And so our story continues not forward now, but inward, into dreams. You've wandered through so many rooms tonight, herbal huts and perfumed chambers, cathedrals thick with incense, forests humming with hidden roots. And even in the Middle Ages, when the line between sacred and sin was tightly drawn, people still slipped beneath it to find softness. To many medieval minds, a change in consciousness was a brush with the divine. In her private journal, never meant for outside eyes, she describes taking the blessed flower brew after a particularly difficult winter. It was prepared by the infirmarian, a woman skilled in tending the sick, and contained dried passion flower, wild lettuce, and a little opium syrup from the traveling traders. Sabina writes, I saw the Virgin walking among the rosemary. She bent and smiled at me, but did not speak. I wept. I awoke with peace. Her entry ends with gratitude, not fear. No one punished her. No one even knew. But that moment lived in her mind for the rest of her days. Saints had visions. Why not a herbalist? Prophets dreamed. Why not a tired midwife after a mug of bitter tea? The heaviness that comes not from burden, but from release. You are sinking like a stone in velvet water. You are held completely in the arms of time. The voices of old monks, mothers, and mystics have whispered their truths. The story remains, but it need not speak aloud anymore. It lives in the hush behind your heartbeat, and the flicker behind closed eyes. And you have listened, not with ears, but with your breath, your heart, and your dreams. Not rushed, not judged, just quiet. In those moments where the mind felt as though it had stepped sideways through time, people often emerged with stories. Some called them dreams. Some called them gifts. Some wrote them down in the backs of ledgers or on torn bits of parchment. Some buried them quietly in the folds of linen with dried flowers. They knew that pain made saints and martyrs, but it also made orphans and madness. So in those quiet corners where judgment didn't reach, they healed each other. Beneath the relics and reliquaries, the markets and manuscripts, the feasts and famines, there was always someone somewhere mixing something in a pot, hoping to offer another soul peace. And those who drank it, smelled it, rubbed it on their skin, or simply lay beside it, they were seeking what you are seeking now. They brewed, blended, burned, soaked, and slept. But now we walk the unseen paths, the ones that run through the soul, shaped by what people felt as they consumed those mixtures, rubbed those oils, breathed that smoke. The altered state was not always visions or bliss. Sometimes it was the slow return of sensation after pain. Sometimes it was the ability to weep again. Sometimes it was silence, deep and thick like wool. And sometimes it was just a single precious thing, sleep. In the medieval world, sleep was not always guaranteed. There were no blackout curtains, no controlled thermostats, no guaranteed warmth. Lavender, mint, hops, rose, chamomile, lemon balm, thyme. Alone, they calmed the nerves. Together, they conjured dreams. People woke with every gust of wind. They stirred at every creak. In city streets, dogs barked. In countryside cottages, rats rustled straw. And so the quest for sleep was sacred. A goal. A healing. A kindness people gave themselves when they could. That's where the herbs came in. The soft little blessings, hung in bundles above doors, or steeped in clay pots, or laid under linen. And there are lullabies written with these in mind. One from 14th century Germany translates roughly, Sleep, my child, and fear not the owl, for I have placed time by the window and poppy in the milk. Simple, honest, magical. And yes, sometimes those herbs did carry a child into deep, forgetful rest. Sometimes they carried the mother there, too. There is something timeless in the way humans have always looked to the natural world to soften their sharpest moments. But the experience was never fully separate from the spirit. A fascinating account survives from a tiny convent near Limoges, written by a nun named Sabina. This was the quiet current beneath the medieval world. Not a thrill, not a spectacle, just stillness, just softness, just sleep. And now, perhaps, you feel the same softness creeping through your limbs. Let it carry you. The herbs have been steeped. The smoke has curled and faded. Let your breath fall slower now. Let your thoughts smooth into stillness, and the warmth of sleep itself. Sleep has likely touched you already, soft and seamless as morning mist across a meadow. But for the part of you still floating, still listening, let the hush deepen now. The story doesn't rush toward endings. It doesn't close with a shout. It simply fades like the final note of a lullaby, leaving you suspended in stillness. That's where we are now, not in the height of the tale, but in its twilight, the quiet descent. Our story finds one final shape in the form of ritual, not the elaborate rituals of cathedrals, but the small, repetitive ones. It was the space it opened, the breath it softened, the night it welcomed, the ones carried out at dusk in cottages with uneven floors, or in cloisters with beeswax candles, or in tents beneath star-splashed skies. You wrapped not in furs or cloaks, but in the softness of sound and story. You breathing in the air that people before you breathed, to air thick with pine, with poppy smoke, with the hush of 1,000 nights like this one. You've knelt in cellars and shrines. You've listened to the language of dreams and the silence of herbs. You've seen the flicker of meaning where once there was only pain. You are not so far from them. You're only a breath away, and in this breath you carry them with you. These rituals were the true pathways to altered states. The grinding of roots, the boiling of water, the whisper of prayer. And somewhere in the distance a lullaby still lingers. They signaled to the body, you may rest now. They signaled to the mind, we are safe here. And whether the mixture was strong or mild, sacred or secret, it was always enveloped in gentleness, in touch, in breath, in repetition. A spoon against a bowl, a finger tracing a symbol in ash. Who knew that mugwort under the pillow brought dreaming, that smoked rosemary kept away plague, that nettle wine eased a soldier's shaking hand? She describes her first solo delivery in a freezing room lit only by fire glow. The mother screamed. The storm outside raged. The walls dripped with cold. And then the apprentice remembered the elder's blend, clove wine, hawthorn syrup, and a sprig of blessed thistle crushed into the woman's palm. The labor slowed. The mother breathed. And when the baby came, the woman wept not in pain, but in relief. In that moment, the apprentice says, I saw the veil lift, not from heaven, from the face. A transformation, a brief sacred high that came not from chemicals, but from touch, scent, and ritual. They passed these truths in whispers, not books, in hands, not ink. And though some were punished, forgotten, or doubted, their knowledge endures. You feel it now, don't you, in the soft hum of these words, in the imagined scent of dried herbs beneath firelight, in the calm that settles inside your chest like warm earth, a handful of crushed leaves wrapped in linen and placed beneath the tongue. Time itself seemed to slow, and in that slowness, space opened up for the mind to wander without fear, for the soul to unfold without judgment. We think now of the women, so many unnamed, who carried this knowledge when no one else did, who remembered which roots to pull in spring. There's an account from 1472, written by a young midwife's apprentice in York. That is the quiet truth of medieval elevation. It was never about the substance alone. And so we return to you, You lying still in the hush of this moment. Let yourself rest now. Let the story dissolve like sugar in warm wine. Let it leave behind only sweetness, only warmth, only sleep. You've traveled through centuries. You've stepped through vapor and vision. And now you don't need to listen anymore. You can float. You can sleep. You can dream. The herbs have been laid out. The candles are out. The shutters are drawn. You've heard it. That is enough. Sink into the stillness now, the deepest part of the night, where even thoughts drift slower than breath. The warmth you feel isn't just imagined, it's centuries of healing hands, of whispered recipes, of quiet rituals performed beneath moonlight and candle flicker. Pain of the body was seen as pain of the soul. He is described only as the man with the little bells. To soothe one was to comfort the other. His name has long since vanished, but in a single parchment fragment, torn from the back of a monastery's alms ledger, he arrived in towns after dark, never speaking, but playing a soft tune on a tiny windpipe and leaving bundles at doorsteps. The bundles held bundles of herbs-burned myrrh, resin, pressed mint leaves, shaved juniper bark, all tied with twine and stamped with a mark, a crescent inside a circle. Another claimed he no longer woke screaming. The wanderer never returned. Wait. Those who used the herbs said their homes smelled of dreams. Not chaos, not escape, but this quiet. One child reported seeing her lost sister in a dream the night after. Press the cloth to the forehead. Let the draft cool. Softly. The story was never meant to be followed to an ending. You don't have to rise. It was meant to guide you gently to this very place, to stillness. The inhale after the oil has been poured, just before the steam rises. The blank between words on a worn page. The weightless moment after the lullaby ends, but before the dream begins. But the ledger note ends with a sentence, carefully written. Peace walked with him. And so when someone offered a mixture, be it a calming draught, a fragrant poultice, you've sipped the brew. You've heard the stories. For a smoked curl of pine resin, they offered more than relief. They offered peace. You've rested beside those who lived before words like medicine and drug and dosage existed. You've learned their language, one of smell, of heat, of rhythm, of care. This is the realm where waking and dreaming blur, where memory and myth become one soft fabric. Let your limbs stretch with the heaviness of steam baths and lavender water. There is nothing more to do. You've walked the path, rooted, folded into the same soft dusk that soothed minds in 1322 and 1428 and every year that passed quietly, without name. You felt the weight of poppies and prayers settle into your skin. Let your mind fade into the soft, static hum of bees and clover and moss against stone. The medieval world did not separate body and spirit as clearly as we try to now. Let us visit one last time with an old wanderer. You are not flying, not lost, not spinning. You are deep. You are resting in the dream of a world before machines, before lights, before noise. And so it walks with you now. Through cloisters and cottages, through incense halls and mountain huts. You've tasted the sacred and the secret. You are not high in the way the word is used today. Let your chest rise and fall with the calm of poppy milk, because this is what they reached for again and again. The rituals were rarely loud. They were slow. Boil the leaves, whisper the name. You are in that moment, now the hush between steps. And even as this story nears its close, you don't have to move. You've journeyed long tonight, and now you're fluent in stillness. Close your eyes fully now, if they haven't already drifted shut. And now you sleep, not because the story commands it, but because your body has remembered how. Let your whole body be soft, now suspended, as if in warm water, as if nothing exists beyond the curve of your breath. There's no more walking to do, no more chambers to open. You're not learning anymore. You're remembering, not from books or scrolls, but from the part of you that understands stillness as an ancient truth. Even now, as the last threads of story stretch and loosen, you remain wrapped in the same quiet those medieval souls sought. You and they are not so different. They, too, stood beneath stars, holding steaming cups of herbal draughts, whispering hopes into the dark. They, too, stirred tinctures slowly, believing that sleep was not surrender, but return. There's a final account, a soft one, written not by a scholar or monk, but by a linen worker named Isabeau from the town of Chinon. She could not write fluently, but she etched a symbol beside her name in her personal ledger, a flower with 7 petals. She used it to mark every page where she documented her nighttime brews. A little ritual each evening, steeped yarrow, honeycomb, and a shaving of polished. Amber warmed over the fire. She called it the Hush Blend. On the final page, she wrote only, "Dreams are not escapes. They are memories waiting to return." That truth has found you now because this moment you are in the heaviness, the quiet, the drifting mind is not false. It is not artificial. It is as real as soil and flame. You have joined a long, unbroken chain of dreamers, those who, with the gentlest tools, made their way inward. And what they found there was not madness. It was peace. And maybe, like them, you will remember something as you sleep, a sensation, a fragment, a word that doesn't quite translate. And maybe you won't. That's all right, too. Not every herb reveals. Some only cradle. Your breath is the only sound now. It fills the silence with soft rhythm, in and out, in and out, like the tide, like the pulse of warm stone after sunset, like a lullaby sung for no one but the night. There are no more words to give you now, not because the story is gone, but because it has folded itself into you. It has steeped like the herbs and become part of your warmth. You are not reading this. You are inside it, inside the hush, inside the slow, sacred twilight, inside the kind of sleep that even poppies envy. Stay here, drift, and if you return, know this door is always open. When you close your eyes beneath candlelight or breathe in lavender from a pillow or hear the soft creak of wood at night, you are there again. With them, with the herbalists, the dreamers, the mothers, the monks, the lost, the found, and for now, you are not any one thing. You are just peace. You are just sleep. You are just the hush that followed the last candle being gently, lovingly blown out. The dream has not ended, it has only deepened. You are not waking, only drifting further, like a feather falling into a deeper layer of cloud, where even memory folds in upon itself and becomes warmth. There are no sounds now, only the echo of breath and the distant memory of leaves rustling on stone walls. You are in the afterglow of everything you've just heard. But more than that, you are inside it, Dot, in this hush. Let us visit the final layer of this world. Not the people, not the places, but the sensations, the textures of the altered mind in. That medieval world, Dot imagined the weight of the air inside a monastery after Vespers, as thick with incense as with silence. The monks move slowly, robes brushing against ancient stone, and the only sound is the crackle of a fire no one needs to tend. The prayers have ended, but their reverberation remains. One monk lingers, his hands stained with ink, and in his small cup of wine a single drop of poppy syrup has dissolved. Not to escape, not to indulge, but to sleep uninterrupted by the demons that scratch at memory. He doesn't see visions. Not this time. He simply breathes deeper. The stone beneath him no longer aches. The tightness behind his eyes softens. And that is miracle enough. Dot now step outside the monastery and into the hut of a hedge witch. She does not call herself that only. Others do. She says she is a helper, a stirrer, a watcher of plants. On her shelves are bundles of rosemary, valerian root, crushed dried pear, and sage. She rarely touches belladonna any more too strong, too unpredictable, but mugwort is a faithful friend. She burns it now, letting the smoke spiral out of a cracked clay bowl. A girl with night terrors sleeps in the next room. The herb doesn't chase the fear away, but it bends it, makes it slow, makes it soft. The girl sleeps, and in sleep she dreams not of wolves, but of snow. Elsewhere the earth provides its own brews. In the mountains where the winds are sharp and the nights fall early, shepherds once made tea of snow-buried thyme, sipped slowly beside their flocks. They didn't know what psychoactive meant. They only knew it made the stars move slower, and the cold feel farther away. One wrote, the sky smiled wider that night. And so they passed the cups, and watched the sheep sleep, and felt themselves just for a moment as light as wind. The altered state in the Middle Ages was not always a crescendo. It was a melting, a slipping, a slow unfastening of the mind's tightest knots. There was no countdown, no dazzling arrival, just the slow realization that the ache was smaller now, that the world was farther away, that the soul had loosened its grip on the chest and finally exhaled. And you, now, are exhaling too, without effort, without thought. You are not holding on. You are being held, Dot, so let this batch of the story hold you as gently as the herbs held them. There's nothing left to analyze, nothing left to understand. Just the memory of warmth, the suggestion of scent, the gentle ancient hum of someone who once sat in the dark and said, "Drink this, you'll feel better soon. You are safe. You are still. You are suspended in the part of the night where even dreams slow down. You've become part of the hush now, not simply listening to it, but breathing within it. You are the softened heartbeat of the old world, the calm echo of footsteps down torch-lit corridors, the breath of smoke curling above an untouched bowl. Sleep doesn't need to be invited again. It is already here cradling you like the thick wool, blankets in a candle-warmed chamber beneath the rafters of time. There is a peculiar truth buried deep in the records of medieval healers. Not all altered states came from plants or powders or wine. Some came from rhythm, repetition, the ritual of breath, a soft chant, murmured again and again over the sick. The act of grinding herbs in a mortar for hours, the circular movement syncing with the slow unwinding of the mind. A Benedictine monk once described entering a trance after copying a single line of scripture hundreds of times, his pen stained red with rose ink, saying, "I felt myself become the page." This wasn't madness, it was surrender. And surrender was sacred. There were even places built for this soft descent, quiet grottos, where the ill were taken to be soothed, not cured. One such place still echoes through the stone ruins of a forgotten French healing sanctuary, where the air smelled of linden blossoms and salt. Visitors were fed warm broth with herbs thought to lift the soul: wood betony, vervain, wild basil, not to awaken the spirit, but to quiet it, to settle it, to let it rest inside its own house again. And sometimes in those walls people saw things, not demons, not saints, but softened shapes, memories, emotions. Some would say they hallucinated, but others whispered that it was the world's veil, pulling just a little thinner dot in a village near Lake Constance. A woman once described a sensation after taking the cloudy tea that only the crone brewed. She said, "I felt myself inside the sky, and the sky inside me, and it hurt less." She was not healed in the bodily sense, but she danced the next day, and that was miracle enough. And now, as the story stretches its fingers toward its final edge, let us return to you, you who has traveled so gently through their worlds, you who has heard the soft secrets of soothed peasants and sleepless monks, you who has sat cross-legged by the fire while a healer whispered the names of herbs like a prayer, you whose breath now mirrors theirs, slow, low, tender dot. No part of you needs to rise just yet. No thought needs to be chased. No question needs an answer. There is only warmth now. Warmth and breath and the ancient pull of release. Whatever weight you carried here, set it down. Let the moss hold it. Let the roots drink it in. You are floating just as they once did, in tea-sweetened stillness, in smoke-blurred rooms, and the silent mercy of a night meant only for rest. And if your dreams begin now, let them bloom slowly. Let them carry the scent of thyme and honey. Let them come on padded feet, wrapped in linen and feather, and let them whisper that you are no longer alone. You never were. The centuries have been holding you in their quiet hands this entire time. You are the hush. You are the sleep. You are the softest part of the story. The quiet deepens. The air becomes thicker with peace, as if the night itself is wrapping you in a gentle embrace. The world outside your window may hum with life, but here, inside the cocoon of story and sleep, there is only softness and stillness. You've crossed the threshold of waking, drifting now into the realm where time loses its sharp edges and flows like slow honey dot. Think of the small moments that mattered most in medieval times, those pauses between work and prayer, between dusk and dawn, when people gathered around fires or in candle-lit rooms to breathe, to sip, to share the simple comforts that soothed weary bodies and tangled minds. One such moment might have been a group of travelers, weary from long roads lined with brambles and dust, who stopped beside a brook to rest. From their packs come bundles of herbs wrapped in cloth mugwort, sage, lavender. They crush the leaves between fingers, releasing fragrant oils that mingle with the cool air. Someone lights a small fire, and soon the sweet smoke curls upward, soft and blue, The travelers lean in, breathing deeply, letting the world soften around them. They don't seek escape, they seek calm, a gentle lifting of the veil between exhaustion and peace. It is a shared ritual, a communal moment of release that needs no words. Elsewhere, in a quiet village cloaked in fog, a healer tends to a child who has not slept for nights. She prepares a tea of chamomile and valerian, letting it steep beside the hearth's glow. She hums an old melody, barely more than a whisper, as she cups the warm liquid to the child's lips. The room is still except for the crackle of burning wood and the soft rise and fall of a sleepy breath. The child's eyelids flutter closed. The journey begins, and you, lying here, are traveling too, not through roads or woods, but through the soft spaces inside yourself. Each breath you take is a step deeper into calm. Each exhale releases the tensions of the day. Each moment draws you closer to the gentle unfolding of sleep. The medieval world knew this. It honored it. It wrapped it in smoke and song, in oil and ink and whispered prayers and silent hope. Now, as you drift, know that you carry these ancient moments with you. They are your companions in the quiet. They are the steady pulse beneath your eyelids. You are safe. You are held. You are home. The night stretches before you like a vast, gentle ocean. You are floating on its surface, carried by the tender currents of centuries-old wisdom. Each wave is soft, each breath a lullaby whispered through the leaves of ancient trees. The world around you has grown quiet and still, leaving space for nothing but calm and ease. Picture a small stone cottage nestled deep in a forest clearing. Inside, a mother tends to her newborn with a careful hand, the flicker of a single candle casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. She has prepared a small bowl of warm milk infused with poppy syrup, a recipe passed down through generations. The scent is sweet and faintly earthy, a promise of rest and release. As the child drinks, the mother hums a gentle tune, her voice barely more than a breath. The room fills with a soft warmth, wrapping the two in a cocoon of safety and love. The baby's eyelids grow heavy, and soon sleep claims them both, carrying them into a realm where pain and fear cannot follow. This simple ritual, repeated countless times across medieval villages and towns, was a sacred act of care. It was a way to ease suffering, to touch the divine, and to find peace in a world often harsh and uncertain. Now, as you lie here, imagine yourself wrapped in that same warmth. Feel the soft weight of rest settle over your body, the gentle pull of sleep drawing you deeper into its embrace. You are cradled by time itself, held by the quiet legacy of those who came before. The herbs have done their work. The smoke has faded into the air. The prayers have been whispered into the night. All that remains is you, soft, still, and safe. Let go completely now. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. Just breathe, drift, and rest. You have arrived at the final shore of this journey. Here at the gentle close of our journey, let the soft silence fill every corner of your being. You have traveled through time and space, through shadow and light, carried on the whispered breath of ancient herbs and the quiet hope of countless souls seeking rest. Feel the slow settling of your muscles, the gentle lull of your heartbeat, as though cradled by the earth itself. The warmth you sense is not just of body, but of history of hands that prepared teas, of lips that murmured prayers, of eyes that closed in trust and released. In this stillness, there is no hurry, no expectation, only the gentle unfolding of night, the tender embrace of sleep. Imagine the soft flutter of poppy petals in a summer breeze, the faint scent of lavender drifting on air thick with twilight. Hear the crackle of firewood, the distant call of night birds, the hush of leaves, whispering ancient secrets. You are a part of this world. You have stepped lightly through its mysteries and its magic, and now you rest within it, safe and sound. Let your breath slow to a whisper. Let your mind drift like a leaf on a quiet stream. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to hold. You, our home. You, our peace. You, our sleep. And with that, the story gently fades away, like a candle's last glow, leaving you wrapped in the softest, deepest calm. Good night.